Hi everyone, in this video we are going to learn about the Cgst, goods and service tax, the concept of the concept of supply, that is section 7. So let's start. In every statute there has to be a taxable event. Earlier in the time of the manufacturing, there used to be the manufacture is the taxable event. In case of the say in the VAT, there has to be the sale of goods, but in case of a GST, it is that is a section 7, that is that is a supply. For the purpose of let's have a quick view of section 7. For the purpose of this act, the expression supply includes, that means it's not an exhaustive definition, all the forms of supply of goods or services are both such as sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rental, lease, disposal made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person in the course of furtherance of business. So there are the four constituent of this limb. That means there has to be a supply of goods or services or both. We need to carefully consider what is considered as a goods and what is service. There are the multiple definitions which are given in the article 366 of the constitution, where it has been defined that everything which is not goods is considered as a service, and what is a good, it doesn't include movable property. If we go into the various definition of the various institutes, such as the sale of goods and etc. Now let's come to the second limb, that is a double A, the activities or transaction by a person other than an individual to its member or constituent or vice versa for the cash, deferred payments or other valuable considerations. So this is the limb that was inserted with effect by the Finance Act 2021 with effect from 1st January 2022, wide notification number 39 upon 2021. I'll explain you why the second limb was inserted. Earlier there was because of the mutuality doctrine, the Supreme Court has distinguished a case law whereby it was declared that the club member, whatever they are providing any valuable services to their individual, is considered because of the doctrine of maturity as doesn't amount to that no one can serve itself. So there was a no levy of the GST. That's why, in order to overrule that judgment, it was inserted, and it is also clarified by the explanation. Let's have a look on the explanation. For the purpose of this clause, it is hereby clarified that notwithstanding anything contained in any other law for the timing in force, or any judgment, decree, or any order of the court, tribunal, authority, the person or its members and constituents shall be deemed to be two separate persons, and the supply of activities or transaction inter se shall be deemed to take place from one person to another. And the third limb is import of service for a consideration, whether not in the course of a business or not. That means there has to be the two consideration, that means import of service and for a consideration. I would like to highlight a case of Netflix. The entity was not earlier registered in India, so whether it's a kind of an import of service, if we really have to look, then we have to check the definition of the import of service. Import of service has been defined in the IGST Act, whereby it was stated that the recipient must be in India, the service provider is outside India, and the service must have been received in India. So that these are the three limbs of the import of service, and the consideration is the fees that we pay to the Netflix. But now how to deal with it? It's a constituent as a supply, and whether it is not a furtherance of business, that means it also includes the personal consumption. Now let's have a fourth limb of the section 7.1, that is activities specified in schedule 1. Schedule 1, whether made or agreed to be made without a consideration. That means in the fourth limb we don't need a consideration as was needed in first limb, that is clause A, 7.1a. Now the D was substituted. Earlier, if we want to have a look on what is D says, we can look into the clause 4. Let's have a look on this. Before omitting the D was read as the activities to be treated as supply of goods or services as referred to in the clause 2. Now why it was deleted? The reason behind this, it was interpreted as all the supply, whatever is stated in the schedule 2 would be considered as a supply, irrespective of fact whether it would pass the test of the above limb, that means 7.1a, 7.1a or 7.1b or 7.1c. So now it was substituted by another new clause, that is clause 7.1a, that is capital A, whereby certain activities or transaction considered as supply in accordance with the provision of subsection 1. That means it has to pass a test which are mentioned in section 7.1. and they shall be treated either as a supply of goods or supply of services. Then would be considered as would be considered as a supply, and then we would look into the schedule 2. Now let's talk about section 712. Notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1, activities or transaction specified in schedule 3 or such activities or transaction undertaken by the central government, state government or local authority. The local authority means municipality and panchayat, in which they are engaged as the public authority, as may be notified by the government on the recommendation of the council, shall be treated as neither as a supply of goods nor as a supply of services. We can also consider it as a negative list, as was somewhere in the time back in the service tax regime. Let's talk about section 713. Subject to provision of subsection 1(1)(a) 2, the government may, on the recommendation of the council, specify by notification the transaction that are to be treated as a supply of goods and not supply of services, or supply of services and not supply of goods. So section 713 talks about what is considered as a supply of a service, either this or this. So today we end our session of this series. Thank you.